All right, let's get right into it. We're going to talk about one of the most powerful and, yeah, controversial discoveries in all of psychology. It's a story about a classroom, a pretty big lie, and a fundamental truth about human potential. And it all started with this simple, incredible idea. What if our expectations could literally shape reality? So I want you to hear this voice. This is Beverly Cantello, a young teacher who, believe it or not, found herself right in the middle of a now famous experiment. What could a psychologist have possibly done to make her feel that way? And why would she later say she was actually grateful for it? Her story, well, it's the key to understanding this whole thing. So let's jump back in time. The year is 1964. A Harvard psychologist named Robert Rosendahl walks into Spruce Elementary School in South San Francisco. He's there to run an experiment, one that would, and this is no exaggeration, change how we think about education, leadership, and just human interaction forever. Okay, so the setup was pretty brilliant. Rosenthal tells the teachers he's got this brand new test from Harvard called the Test of Inflected Acquisition. Sounds super official, right? He explains that this test can pinpoint specific kids who are about to have this massive intellectual growth spurt. He called them the academic bloomers. And what happened next was just wow. Just like he predicted, the students he'd pointed out as bloomers totally took off. The youngest kids, the first graders, had the most stunning results. In just one school year, their IQ scores shot up by an average of over 27 points. I mean, to put that in perspective, a jump like that is almost unheard of. It's truly massive. So this result just had everyone scratching their heads. How could a simple test predict such a wild transformation? Were these kids some kind of hidden geniuses that only the special Harvard test could spot? Or was something else going on? Well, here's the big reveal. The entire thing was a lie. That special test, it was just a standard, off-the-shelf IQ test. And those so-called bloomers, they weren't special at all. Rosenthal had picked their names out of a hat. They were chosen completely at random. The only thing that had actually changed was the teacher's expectations, their belief in those students. That was the real magic. And this phenomenon came to be known as the Pygmalion Effect. You know, it's named after that Greek myth about the sculptor Pygmalion who carves a statue of a woman and falls in love with it. His belief and love are so strong that the gods bring the statue to life. It's the same idea here. When we hold these really high expectations for people, they tend to rise up and meet them. Our belief helps bring their potential to life. But the story doesn't just end there with a neat little bow. When Rosenthal published his findings, it made a huge splash. The media absolutely loved it. But almost immediately, it was followed by this ferocious backlash from academics and politicians. You can see the whole journey on this timeline. It actually started in 1963 with rats. Yep, rats. The ones labeled Maze Bright did better than the ones labeled Maze Dull. Then the 1968 book brought the idea worldwide fame. But the 70s were just filled with intense criticism. It wasn't until 1978, after a massive analysis of over 300 studies, that the scientific community finally confirmed, hey, Rosenthal was right all along. This effect is real. And when I say the criticism was fierce, I mean it was brutal. Really prominent scholars like Robert Thorndike from Columbia University just tore the study apart, calling it technically defective. The fight for the legitimacy of this idea was officially on. So the attacks really came from three main directions. First, you had critics like Thorndike, who said the original IQ data was just flawed, which made the results look way more impressive than they were. Second, powerful teacher unions felt like the study was just blaming them for students failing. And third, some people saw it as a political attack on the whole system of tracking students by ability. But even as the science started to firm up, a huge practical problem was left hanging in the air. It was a puzzle that, honestly, stumped researchers and leaders for decades. And here's the absolute core of it. The effect seemed to work best when the teachers didn't even know they were doing anything special, when they genuinely believed these kids were about to bloom. But that belief was built on a lie. So if you need to deceive someone to make it work, how could you ever use it ethically in the real world? And that's exactly why one researcher called it great science that is underapplied. Think about it. You can't just go around telling managers that a few randomly picked employees are secret geniuses, or tell a drill sergeant that a handful of recruits are destined to be Navy SEALs. The lie was a massive roadblock. So Rosenthal and other researchers had to pivot. They shifted their focus. Instead of just proving that the effect exists, they started asking, okay, how does it actually work? How does a belief inside a teacher's head turn into actual IQ points for a student? Eventually, they broke it all down into 4 key things. First, climate. Teachers just create a warmer, friendlier vibe around the students they expect more from. Second, input. They teach them more stuff, and more challenging stuff. Third, output. They give those kids more chances to talk and answer questions. And finally, feedback. They give them more detailed and positive feedback. These are the little, subtle behaviors that shout, "I believe in you," without ever saying a word. And understanding those 4 factors, that was everything. That was the key that unlocked a modern breakthrough, a way to finally use the Pygmalion Effect on purpose, ethically, and without a single lie. And that brings us to the work of researcher Christine Ruby Davies down in New Zealand. Instead of lying to teachers, she just taught them. She ran workshops explaining the power of high expectations and those 4 factors we just talked about. But here was the secret weapon. She videotaped them in their classrooms. And this gave the teachers what she called a potent reality check. They could finally see all the subtle cues they were sending that they had no idea about. So, did it work? Oh yeah, it worked. The students whose teachers got this training made way bigger gains in math. On average, they finished the school year a full 3 months ahead of students in the regular classrooms. That is a huge difference, and it was all done without any deception. And this wasn't just a one-time thing. Other researchers, like Robert Pianta, found similar results. His training programs, which also used video feedback, were shown to bump an average student from the 50th percentile clear up to the 59th on standardized tests. The code was cracked. You can actually teach people how to be Pygmalions. So, after this half-century journey of science, controversy, and breakthrough, what does it all mean for us today? What's the big takeaway? Well, let's go back to Beverly Cantello, the teacher we met at the very beginning. Once she got over being offended, she said the whole experience was profound. It made her so aware of her own expectations that it shaped her entire 36-year career, pushing her to challenge every single student she ever had. And that really gets to the core truth here. The Pygmalion Effect isn't actually about some clever trick or a lie. At its heart, it's about genuinely seeing the potential in other people, our kids, our colleagues, our students, and finding ways, big and small, to communicate that belief to them. We do this every single day, whether we realize it or not, with our tone of voice, with who we pay attention to, with the opportunities we give. So the real question isn't whether this effect is real. The question is, how are you going to use it? Whose potential will you unlock?